and vegetation types. And these include the proper rainforest, seasonal forests, decidual forests, flooded forests, and sandy savannas. And I'm telling this because all of those different, this mosaic of forests and habitats is actually driving by river flooding and flooding seasons and dry seasons. And because of this, the climate change will have like a huge impact for people and species living in this area. So in some point, I'm just getting back in the past is the story, the geological story about Amazon, which is kind of David Attenborough presentation now. So
I love it.
when we had Gondwana, the African and South America was connected. The Amazon River actually was a proto river of Congo in Zambia region. And in that time, the river flowed from the west to the east. But then, 15 million years ago, when the Andes was formed by collision between the South American plate and Nazca plate, and the rise of Andes, the river, we had like a linkage between Brazilian and Guyana bedrock shields, which blocks the river and and, cause the Amazon River became like an ocean in the middle of the continent because with these connections. And gradually this sea, inland sea, if we could say something like that, became a massive swamp and freshwater lake. And with marine inhabitants, they found like more or less 20 species of stingray. For us, it's like haya. Do you remember haya for in Portuguese? And um, and this species is very connected to the passive species, the Pacific Ocean. So, and now they have adapted to the fresh water, and this other species in the Amazon River is related to those species from the ocean. And about 10 million years ago, the waters through the sandstones, they start to come from the west, and before it was the west, and then they become to flow to east. And this was the time then the Amazon forest was born, something like this. So because you have the Andes, and from Colombia, Venezuela, in the limits, the river start to grow. The Amazon River start to grow, and the forest and the soil was more sandy. We have a forest there. But then we had the ice age, and the sea level dropped, and the Amazon lake became a river. And after 3 million years, the ocean level in ice age was so low that exposed the Central American isthmus and the Panama Isthmus, and then this promoted the migration of fauna from the south of America to the north, and from the north to the south. There is lots of discussions about this. The big mammals in the south, the north, could come to the South America, but we lost lots of species between South America to North America. But this is another discussion. But I'm trying to say this to explain also, after the ice age, the forest was retreat, and there is a discussion, but most of the forest was isolated in Iceland, in patch, in the middle of the region, and savanna was grown, so was expanded. And this separate the species and the species which was separate, isolated for a long time, they had genetic differentiation, which after when the ice age ended, the species, if they were connected, they were not very genetically similar anymore. So because of this, we have separate species, but the number of species, like the richness, tell us how increased the biodiversity with this climate change. And all of these explanations that I'm telling to you now is to say that this process was just possible because we had species, and we had lots of species with different features and adaptability, which is what we need when we have like climate change. And climate change is a process. Everything is a process in the world, and anything could happen and change the climate because of spatial reasons or whatever. And I think, but the question is, when you have a species and you have genetic diversity, the evolutionary process, they happen. This process happens. But when you have loss of biodiversity, this process is not possible because you don't have the resource, which is like the species and everything. So other thing important about the Amazon on climate change, it's everybody knows this, that the forest produce lots of water, which is produced because the trees are breathing and or transpiration, and this water is consumed by the forest, but also part of this water goes to the other regions in the countries, not only in the Amazon region, but for example, you could Google something called flying rivers, and it would explain you the process. But for example, in Brazil, 70% of gross natural products come from areas which receive this rain from Amazon forest. So this is the picture about the forest and the kind of service the forest, why we have to protect the forest and work together. And the other things, like the state of art that I tried to tell you, is like when we, in the Rio 1992, we had the Convention of Biological Diversity, which is CDB, and was like an international policy for conservation of biodiversity. And when they started to discuss like climate change as well, but was like a very discussion on climate change was really not, was starting, but loss of biodiversity was in the top of the discussions. And now we have like all of the conventions of parties in, which is like, we have like the Convention of Parties 15 this year for biodiversity, and we have, which will be in China, and we will have a Convention of Parties 26 in Scotland, which is the Convention of Climate. So for those conventions, Brazil in the past was, the first conventions of biodiversity was in Rio, and was many countries assigned, and many countries put targets to follow each 10 years to targets to try to save biodiversity in some way. And this means work, science, and all of efforts and money to do this job, to do this, to achieve those targets. And now Brazil is so bad in the environmental policies and conservation policies that we were excluded from this convention. First, because our government tried to lie and about the calendar, the schedule for the conventions in China, and they were asking that it's not possible to do online meeting to approve the schedule, because we'll be excluding people, which is not a reason, because everybody are doing pandemic meetings and everything is working. So they try to block those conventions, the process to approve those conventions. So, and also for conventions of biodiversity, the countries have to present a plan with ambitions, ideas, and practical ideas, and also showing how the country was achieving the past targets. And Brazil did nothing about this. So we were excluded to talk, the president actually, which I'm really glad, because he doesn't know how to say, but it's very a shame that the country in the past was really leading the discussions with, because the scientists in Brazil, the science is very strong, everything. So we have also Nagoya Conventions, which talk about the use, then share benefits from use of plants and everything. And CITES Convention, which is a convention to deal with international trade of threatened species for fauna and flora. And Brazil also did like a jeopardize from this and sabotage and take off the list a very important species for Brazil, which is Ipe, and which is used for make floors or furniture or something like this. So yeah, so I'm telling about this because those conventions is very important, because it's the method, or is the way that countries could provide people working on it, so more opportunities on jobs, for including science or green jobs, and more than in finance, and also improve resource for local production and develop of communities. This is really important. It's like a kind of, when you have those agreements and targets to achieve, and the country is very, very committed to do this, is the way we can do this globally and together with resource from the governments and everything. So, and this means also like a more opportunity to young people to work more on science and conservation and green production, everything, than in finance or like consumist thing or whatever. So, and to finish, just to say the predictions for climate change for Amazon countries under climate change is not good, because the scientists is telling, as the past, more areas will become more savanna, because the cutting down forests and also the draw, and also extreme events like fires, not because people is just putting fire in the shrublands or something like this, but because all of the change in the environment, the fire will be spread quickly, because the lack of rain, or because the wind, something more physical than biological. And also this, we have like more flooded areas by the river, which is like kind of the results will be displacement of local communities, and which is not good. And also in a big scale in the world, we will have this like broadly migration of people trying to escape and survive under like extreme events of flood or fires and everything. And the reductions of the rainfalls for everybody means like low production, low food, and it's like this. It's just not a really good sense, but we have to deal with this. And I think the most important thing is we cannot wait for socialism, sadly, but we have to work on it even under capitalism, we have to do something now, because the predictions the scientists had in the past for 2050, 2040 to have the extremes events already start to happen. So in the next decade, we are going to see much more disasters than was predicted first for the first conventions. It's so yeah, we don't have time sadly, and we have to put this in the agenda of discussions to discuss ecocide and other things. Thank you. Sorry, the time.
A marvelous contribution. Thanks so much. Just on the last point, it's not as though socialism can be a distant objective in this sense, and let's discuss this. In our approach, well, it's a general approach that Trotsky has put over, but it's there in all the Marxist literature. We are looking to see transitional demands. In other words, you're putting forward ideas for change which will overcome capitalism or would confront and overcome capitalism. So let's discuss how we can put forward demands. You've mentioned so many good things that need to be done to make sure that, you know, that's the way in which things develop, and that all the countries that you mentioned can be in coordinated action through united working class action, because the government's going to do nothing, as it seems.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, I'm so sorry to have to just chip in there and do that, but because of time, I'd like to, we should have a discussion towards after we've heard the three contributions. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to lose Nara, who's exhausted, and we might just not hear the end. Nara, would you like to come in now?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Raquel, Silvana, Roger, Dave, and nice to meet you, Maíra. Welcome. I think we never met, so I'm just going to put time, and I just want to I put together some ideas, and that's going to be refined anyway. So, but before I start to talk about the local elections that happened last year in October, I need to draw a little bit, talk about a little bit about the background, what's going on in Brazil, because Brazil, we're still in a coup mood in Brazil. So in 2016, there was the first woman president elected, Dilma Rousseff, was impeached with absurd allegations, which we know that they were not true. So after the impeachment, the Vice President Michel Temer took office and named a few military as a minister to secure his stay in power. And then there was a massive attack on Brazilian institutions, privatizations, cut and loss of rights. And there's implementing ultra neoliberal policies, like, for example, the labor laws reforms attacking trade unions, and which lost 2/3 of their income. Attacks on the state-owned company Petrobras, changing of procurement rules, lifting the protection of national industry, etc. And another one which I listed as important, it was they ended two funds created by PT governments for the rainy days. And one of them is the royalty from oil exploration, which were bound to be invested in health and education. So they took from the health and education from the Brazilian people, and they gave to Shell, to BP, and all these other international oil companies. So important to remember what was going on in Latin America and Caribbean. So just before the coup in Brazil, there was coup in Paraguay and Honduras, and after Brazil, there was another one in Bolivia, and some other problems in the South American countries. There was a massive persecution of left-wing former presidents and popular leaders and activists. So this is known as a lawfare. And Rafael Correa, who is the former president of Ecuador, who is also a victim of lawfare, And he said wisely that lawfare is today what the Condor operation was in the 60s and 70s in Latin America. It is important to understand the Condor operation was a CIA-sponsored operation targeting left-wing politicians, leaders, and activists from the left. And the luckiest ones were murdered by heart attack, car, or air crash. But most of them were sent to prison, tortured, and executed. The survivors who managed to reach Europe told the story for the record. So, in Brazil, just before the 2016 coup, Lula became the lawfare target led by a judge called Sérgio Moro, head of the car wash operation Lava Jato, which started in 2014 and destroyed hundreds of Brazilian companies in the infrastructure sector and its supply chain, causing unemployment of 3 to 4 million people. In 2017, Sérgio Moro convicted Lula for corruption in a Kafkanian process in which the lack of evidence, sorry, I think I wrote something wrong in there, but the lack of, there was such a lack of evidence, they couldn't find any evidence to convict him, and then in the end he was convicted as an undetermined office act. Basically, they didn't have anything to accuse them. They say undetermined office acts in the office. So in January 2018, the High Court had confirmed the conviction, increasing the sentence. And in April 2018, he was arrested after the Supreme Court confirmed the legality of prison in second instance before all appeals. So with this controversial decision, Lula was definitely not allowed to run for president. So coincidence or not, he was ahead in the polls, and this decision was overturned and Lula was released from prison in November 2019, although the conviction is still waiting for a few habeas corpus from Supreme Court, including cancellation of all trials due to Judge Sérgio Moro being a biased judge. It's important to continue the fight to ensure Lula is granted full political rights, and so he can run for president in 2022 elections. So without Lula, now we get to Bolsonaro, because Bolsonaro was only elected because Lula was taken out from the presidential election. So he won in 2018 with almost 28 million votes against 47 million from the PT's candidate Fernando Haddad. Bolsonaro's party, by then, PSL, elected the largest number of MPs, followed by PT. Many of PSL were people connected to paramilitary, Neopentecostal churches, and police and armed forces. So Bolsonaro, supported by Trump, started his mandate with many military as a ministers, and named Sérgio Moro as a Minister of Justice, the judge who prevented Lula to be candidate against Bolsonaro. So he has since left the government, and there is not, because there was a break in the dialogue between the far right with the center right, which is connected to Sérgio Moro. And then he left, and now he landed a job as a managing director of Alvarez and Marsal, which the company is working in the administration of the largest Brazilian construction company called Odebrecht, which had business in many countries around the world, especially in South America. The company went bust because of the car wash operation. So basically, again, he got a job, landed a job, which is connected to his the operation he was leading as a judge. Okay, so this is a bit of background. I'm going to cut many of this background, but I'm going to summarize a bit better. But Coming to the local elections last October, so there is an understanding in how this was not necessarily, there was not necessarily a victory for Bolsonaro, but there was not a victory for progressive parties either. So many individuals, the analysis that the right and the center-wing right were clear the winners of these local elections. So the progressive parties, particularly PT, managed to stabilize this situation with losses and gains. Although they could not be called winners. There is a long way to organize, yeah, and then according to PT analysis, they say that they maintain the position, the 2016 position, although they expected better results, and it does not mean that the election was a big defeat to the left. Any analysis of the results should take in consideration the exceptional conditions in what they were disputed, which surely influenced the results, favoring the parties linked to the federal government or linked to Bolsonaro, which were most of the mayor were running for re-elections, and the percentage increased from 45% in 2016 to 63% of success of re-elected mayors. And many of them, they received the pandemic resources ahead of the election. So they use this, the use of the resource to provide it to the population. This is actually favored the current local government, helping them to be re-elected. It's also important to highlight that in the last hours of the 2018 elections, there was a conservative wave of message, intensive illegal use of social media and fake news had been repeated in 2020. And some government officials trying to make this like as a normal thing, use of tools to distort the results of elections, use of the latest high-tech and strategy of big data, which we all know what is it. So, and abuse of economic and political power. So that is, there's a few, this is the few of the, a bit of the analysis from PT, okay, for the local elections. And finally, I just would like to add something because it's important, and I think that is someone should talk about this. I won't be able to put this in my contribution because the COVID is being affected badly the Brazilian economy, and Bolsonaro has shown no commitment in addressing the situation. And the position approved as emergency benefit through parliaments was 600 reais, which is the local currency, which now has been cut to 300. And we will see the effects from January now onwards. And the official number of unemployment is high, is 14%. And we take in account, we take into account people who has lost their jobs, but not normally looking for work. This could be as high as 30 million people in Brazil looking for a job. So Bolsonaro's management of COVID is appalling. Brazil is in the second wave of COVID, and there is almost 200,000 deaths. Brazil is in the second deaths around the world, so in second place. And at the moment, the North region is in chaos, especially the city of Manaus. And I think this question of COVID needs to be addressed, really. And finally, I would like to talk. There's something going on now. Is the elections for the leadership of the Brazilian Parliament. So I think each January they have this election, or maybe every 2 years. I'm not sure. I have to double check. So at the moment, there is the leader of the Parliament. he's not together with Bolsonaro, and they trying to make a bloc. And basically, this bloc now it's the center right, and the left. Many of the left parties they are negotiate a tactical coalition with the center right wing parties to defeat Bolsonaro's bloc inside the Brazilian Parliament. So this is there will be a lot of things to debate in January around this what's happening there, because this is just a tactical, but that's risky, because many of them they were the politicians and the people, the parties that actually they organize and they manage the coup in 2016. And so there's a lot of things, but the Workers' Party is expected to get a better position to block more privatizations, loss of rights, and keep the democracy in Brazil, because there is a risk of another coup because of the military in the government, etc. So that's what's happening in Brazil, and I hope it's contribution for the debate.
Marvelous contribution, Nora. I know you're very tired, but all the points were there, and many questions which will be in our mind, which we need to debate further, such as, what is the politics, what attitude do we take to these coalitions and the like, when we
that's
know
what we're debating now.
Those are very difficult points for the left parties, and often end up in major problems. But then there's also this question which I raised, which maybe we can just keep on our minds, and that is the question of Bolsonaro cutting back on the emergency payments, apparently quite drastically. So, that's certainly going to be a position where there'll be a lot of resistance from below. But anyway, these are points for us to debate further. And just because of time, I think we need to move on to Silvana, who's then going to speak on the position of women in Brazil at this conjuncture. Thanks, Silvana.
Good evening, everyone. I think to talk about women, we need to start talking about Simone Beauvoir, that she, according to her analysis, women are considered second sex. A woman live in oppression, and they are not seen as human beings sometimes. But after many fights, since 1837, a woman in America, and then a woman in United Kingdom, they start fighting for the right to vote. So we start seeing some change, how women were accepted in the society, but because they didn't consider them capable to deal with the politics, they didn't think a woman were smart enough to deal with the abstract constructions. Maybe just they were just allowed to work at home. Before the capitalism, women they had certain power, because they used to make everything inside the home, so they were considered essential to the house, because they used to make clothes, soaps, and all that. They could help the men to make the money, so they were seen as economic need. But when the capitalism started in the fabrics, they start like building things outside the home, they lost the power. So a woman in the middle class, they start fighting for the women's rights, and they want to vote. They had the suffrage in America, and here in America was 1837, and here was about here was about 1880 when they started fighting for the right to vote. In Brazil, believe it or not, Brazilians, they have the right to vote in 1932 with the Vargas, Getúlio Vargas. They, according to the Brazilian Constitution, a woman woman has the same right. Women have the same rights as a man. But in reality, we don't, because we need to work harder than them. We need to study harder than them. Even though we sometimes have a higher level of education, they still make less money than the men. I'm sorry, I had to talk about now. So they, even though they go out and they have to work outside the home, they some women even pay half of the bills inside the house, but they still are responsible for the domestic work. And also a woman that denotes they denotes their personal projects in order to succeed in a professional life. So they need to wait to get pregnant for the motherhood or to get married, because they cannot combine the two things together, because otherwise they would not have the same opportunities that the men. Also, they are responsible for the children, for the house, for everything that's happening inside the house. A woman, they earn less than 30% than the men. Is worth to mention that even though they live, they work in the same position of the men, they still earn less than them. A woman, they recognize that they earning money and they are independent and they are pride of it, but they still have so many struggle. But in 2013, the PT government, they came up with this idea, because in Brazil we have a lot of domestic violence, and they even they created, even though if you kill someone, you can be penalized as a crime. But because many men in Brazilian society, they believe the woman is their property, so they end up killing the woman. So we have many social problems being a woman in Brazil. So if the woman wants to end up their relationship, they can be killed by their spouse or their companion, whatever you want to call. And so they create this law that protect, if the man killed the woman, they would stay longer in a prison. But in Brazil, you see, they can just stay up to 30 years in the prison. So they don't care if they kill a woman, because they're gonna be out of the prison after 5 years in some case. But in 2013, to minimize these crimes and minimize the pressure over women, PT created the Congress and Lula, he signed a law, Bolsa Familia, that woman would have extra cash that she could spend in electricity, water, and on electricity, water, and transport, that she could perhaps take care of the children, take care of, even find a job, or take some rest. The thing is, like, we gotta divide a woman, because some women are Black, some women are middle class, some women are the work power. So, I mean, depends which class you belong to. I think you suffer less or more. But with the feminicide, doesn't matter which class you belong to, yeah, or the domestic violence, you still have those types of aggression against women. What else did I find out? After Bolsonaro went to power in 2018, a woman started being killed more. Why? Because he doesn't have no respect for women. He goes out and say like things like, because when the feminicide started, he said, you know, because men doesn't have a job, so he end up killing the woman, or he end up hitting the woman because they don't have enough money to sustain the family. But guess what? In Brazil, Brazilian woman, even the poorer you are, the more work you do, the more work you have to work. But because you are sometimes don't have a good education, you don't make as much money as a woman that has higher education. So you work every day from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. But in the end of the day, you bring home, let's say, divide 1,000 real by 7, you end up with, let me see how much, 600 pounds a month, I believe. I'm not sure. So it's not enough to take care of your children. So in the end of the day, a woman are tired, and you need to, even if you are tired, in Brazil, 35 years old, you are old. Men, they look at women as an object, because if you are 35 years old, they consider yourself old. We have this psychologist, and she also is a philosopher. She said that a woman, men look a woman like a woman is in a shelf. So they put the woman like, let's say you are blonde and you have blue eyes. So the less characteristic you have, according to the men, you are worth less. So by the end of the day, if you are Black, or if you are fat, or if you are, you know, you don't have the same condition, even to find a husband, or to find a boyfriend, or to have a better life. Even if you want to find a job, they're gonna look how you are in order to give a job. Another thing that I realized those days, and even she talked about this, is like the man, when he becomes a trans, he can even have power in our society. But if a woman, she tries to become, if she is bisexual, or if she is a lesbian, she cannot, she doesn't have the same vision in society. So woman is always going to lose in Brazilian society. So there is a lot of work that we need to do in the school, like about gender, about race, and about women's quality. So I hope I gave a little insight of a woman's, about woman Brazilian society. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Silvana. I learned a lot, especially about the date. I think it was 1837. and how, in many ways, Bolivar seemed to be a great liberator, was actually very far from the case, and that, the women will have to raise all the economic questions as well as the formal rights, to be able to change the position.
Yes, because when a woman, like in America or even in Brazil, when the middle class, the woman from the middle class, that's the ones that started looking for to have the right to vote. But they didn't, that's why it's wrong at this moment. Not that you don't need to look at the race, but you also need to look at the class, because I think the class, if you look at the social class, you can kind of have a fight for everybody at the same time,
Yeah. Well, thank you. Now, look, I'd like to do the following, because we've had some really excellent contributions. I've got a lot of points I'd like to make, but I'm sure others do too. But we don't have an enormous amount of time before we all fall asleep. Could I do the following? Could I ask Myra to come in with some comments? And then for Roger to give some general points about all of these contributions, and then let's see where we go. Could we do that? Mm-hmm.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Rachel, for that insight about the forest in Brazil, and also thank you very much, Nara, as well, for you talking about what is the politic issues in Brazil, because actually I am from Ecuador. We are having exactly the same problems, and Silvana as well. My solidarity with Brazil, because unfortunately we share the common problems among Latin America, being a country where United States feel and believe that Latin America is their backyard, and they treat us as such, with working with the interests of the big corporations in United States. Because let's be frank, United States is a capitalist society, which is basically led by maniacs. I call them maniacs capitalists, which it doesn't care about climate change, it doesn't care about women's rights, doesn't care about children's rights, doesn't care whether they poison the water, the air, the land. All they care is about filling themselves with pockets with money, and then you forget it about human rights. They haven't even signed the human rights, For them, it's very easy to impose a human rights around the world, telling us what to do, because they wanted to behave like the big brother, giving them advice in the way we should behave. But they are criminals. They are criminals of, how you say, they are mass criminals in this country, They have destroyed many countries, going like Haiti. We're going to talk about Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, you name it, with more than 900 military bases in Latin America. In Ecuador, we suffer the same conditions. We have, unfortunately, a government which has sold itself to the devil, as Chavez used to call the devil is the North and the United States. Lenin Moreno actually gave the United States the island Galapagos as a military base, and they enter in there, trying to convince the people who actually they have a green base, where they're going to protect apparently the water, they're going to protect the island, It is such a ignorance. They treat us like basically some form of people who cannot even think, and we don't have any intellect at all. And unfortunately, this is the society that we live, we have, unfortunately, this government has called the International Monetary Fund. You might know the International Monetary Fund is an organization, apparently the last resort. They lend money as a last resort, but actually it's an agency of the United States to to actually work on the interests of the criminals, capitalists who only do is basically collect money and contaminate everything and basically exploit our societies, basically treating us as a post-colonialist. We basically are slaves in the 21st century in whole Latin America. This is what we are, unfortunately. You know, they take all our resources, they contaminate everything. You might know what they done in Haiti, a country totally destroyed, living in total misery, and this is what they actually doing. And with COVID-19, and actually has been totally atrocious with this government as well, perhaps even the same as Bolsonaro, where Lenin Moreno has actually reduced more than 1 billion expenditure in education, health, and everything to follow the conditionalities given by the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund had obliged the government to privatize all our resources, and at the moment we have privatized our we have privatized the oil and transport, air transport. Basically, you know, I could go on with the list, and I don't really wanted to steal your time, guys, because I wasn't in the list to talk about anything. But yes, we share the same common problem, and we as a people, as Rachel said, we don't have time about socialists going forward. We need changes. We need to make the changes now. We need to actually join together as a community, as a society, to stop this criminal destroying the only planet that we have to live. Thank you very much. I think that's it.
Okay, some marvelous points there, Mara. Although, as we say, we can't wait for socialism. I'm afraid the environment won't wait for us. So we have to act because capitalism is driving all these processes. But look, there's been some marvelous contributions. Could I say that, you know, let's have Roger come in now and some time for general discussion. And then I think we should draw in how we contribute some of our discussion in the coming conference. Roger?
Yes, comrades, it's been a really fascinating discussion, and I've learned a lot. I'm not I have to admit, I'm not an expert on Latin America. I have a lot to learn about it, and that process certainly, you know, I made several steps forward today listening to your contributions, comrades. You see, I remember I joined, you know, I was a socialist almost from birth. Like I was born into a socialist, very active socialist family, and I joined what was then called Militant, which was a Marxist organization, you know, in my teens, and I stayed with them. I worked actually. I was a member for about 30 years. I later had developed differences with them, and they developed differences from what they had stood for before. That's another long story. But I was a full-time worker for them for 20 years. Now, I remember how closely we followed events in Chile in the early 1970s. We were jubilant at the election of Salvador Allende in Chile, and we followed very, very closely everything that happened, all the mass forces that brought him to power, all the different political, you know, at that time I could have been quite an expert on the history of individual left politicians and particular left parties and breakaways from other groups and so on, and what Popular Unity stood for. And we were very absolutely also very insistent that Allende, for all the fact that he was a sincere and courageous representative of the working class of Chile, it was so clear the mistakes that he was making and what the horrific consequences were going to be eventually. And I wrote articles. At that time I was sort of considered in militant to be a bit of the expert on Chile, and I followed it very closely. And I wrote articles of the whole, saying how they allowed him to come to power on the basis that he had that he guaranteed the existing powers of the military, of the judiciary, and of the press. And that being the case, all of those forces were there working from the beginning to undermine him. And of course, with the generous assistance of their friend Kissinger in the north. And when the Chilean coup came, I'm afraid that we were not surprised by that. So we were devastated, but at the same time, we were desperate to try to find people that we could talk to and sympathize with. I had long discussions with many emigres, many exiles from Chile who had managed to escape and settle in Britain and in other countries of Europe. So I'm saying all that just to say that I've had a fascination with Latin America. I haven't kept up, mainly because we in WIN have not had, until now, we've not had many contacts with people from Latin America. And our work has mainly been in North America and in Europe and in South Asia. And it's part of the process of the growth of WIN, and we're really excited about that we're now developing contacts and finding co-thinkers in one country after another. And I must say, I mean, it'll sound like flattery, and I assure you I'm not the sort of person to indulge in flattery at all. But the talent that has been shown tonight in all of your contributions, and the amount of expertise that you have, and your skill in explaining it and putting it forward. I mean, that's huge, going to be huge assets for us in WIN, and huge assets, in other words, for the process of trying to develop a real international movement of the working class. And that's what WIN is for. That's what WIN has been, was created for. We worked over many years trying to get to expand our base. And now that is happening. Paradoxically, it's in the year of the lockdown. It's in the year of in the year when, if it had not been for this fantastic weapon in our hands, Zoom, then we'd have been completely paralyzed by what's happened. But actually, on the contrary, as you know, we have our weekly meetings in WIN. We've had comrades participating from a dozen countries. We're about to have our WIN conference. We're expecting to have at least 15 or maybe getting on for 20 countries represented at that conference. And they're all, we're not collecting trophies. There are many left groups which will just say, oh, you see, we've got somebody here, we've got these people there, and they lay down a line and they dictate to them. But for us, on the contrary, we consider ourselves not so much teachers as learners, and we can learn so much from the experience. So we have to learn, and it's our responsibility to learn and to digest and to absorb, and then only then to generalize the experiences that comrades can concentrate for us and explain to us. So, I mean, I could say a lot more, but really what I want to say is that I'm, welcome to WIN, welcome to our conference, and we are really looking forward to an absolutely fruitful exchange of ideas and experiences, and together we are going to change the world. So, comrades, okay?
Well, I just have to send more than verbal applause with my hands too. That's our African tradition. Now look, can I just say, to follow through with what Roger said, I want to just pay a tribute to those who've helped get the network going, and particular Raquel, who's got my son to do things which I would never have got from him if I'd asked directly. So we all benefit from our links and loves. And what I can say is that we want to take up the points which, you know, I had a bit of an exchange with Nara. And can I say, we love criticism, not blind, crazy criticism. But if it's not right, we want to fix it. That's what criticism is there for. In other words, if you say, why do we work this way? We're not going to say, well, this is the way we work and become defensive. WIN's tradition is to listen and to harmonize what there is through improving our way we work and through improving the way we exchange ideas and develop our theories. So, you know, it's so great to have this marvelous exchange. We have some diversity of opinion. Everywhere people are saying, well, look, we can't wait for socialism. Indeed, we can't wait for socialism because we have to act now with all the transitional method. This is something we all need to study and to develop on how we raise the common demands of the people and tie that up in a bundle, which is actually the socialist transitional program. In other words, that makes things move, and all those dead institutions which are just holding us back break, and so we can move forward, and all that energy of the people actually turns towards political revolution and social change. So I just want to pay a tribute then to Raquel. I've paid tribute to Nora, to Silvana, Tamara, to all of us who've come together, because Nora, you've said that you want to bring people in. The door is wide open. Please bring in those comrades that are there in struggle. That's what we want. Silvana, I know that you're even going in Oxford, going from door to door. You're a passionate organizer. You're doing stuff which is very brave and sometimes I'm sure tiring. But just remember that work with us and in us so that you can get, I wouldn't say shortcuts, but to link up those nodes and internodes. That's the point I think I've learned from Raquel, you know, that we make those links, organic links, you know, that exist in society and bring them to political fruition.
We lost you.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's frozen.
Okay. And then to Mara, I just want to say thank you for...
That's why we're waiting for, oh, there we are.
Yeah. And then for Mara to be able to contribute. I'm sure you've got lots. I'm sorry, I see my internet's not the best. Let me just go offline. I mean, do this. So you can't see my face and my hands waving, but maybe you can hear me better. So Mara, I just want to thank you as well for joining the group. Please bring more people from Ecuador and throughout the region, because one thing I've found with our Latin American comrades is that you speak to one, you speak to 10. You speak to one in one country and you're already speaking to 5 in another country. So let's bring that continent together. We've mentioned Bolivar. Well, we have to continue that mission in a totally different way to a fruition. How are the continent to be united against imperialism, against the ravages of capitalism and the killing and the genocide of indigenous people? How are we going to do that? Well, through actually uniting the poor and the oppressed, and then the strength of the working class to be able to bring people together. So that's what I'm looking forward to see. And I just, maybe we could have some last minute contributions. I'm sorry to say that, but if you have some more points, please indicate or just come in. And so we can actually hear you before the end of the discussion. Oh, just one last point. The contributions are marvelous. I would love to see those notes put together, and maybe we could get them up on the brink, you know, our website. So please, you know, you've done some homework, you've formed some ideas. I would love to see, you know, all this work coming together in a way so that everybody else can benefit too. I have recording, as you'll see, and I hope that other comrades who are not participating can also benefit from this too. Other contributors? Okay.
I think Rachel wants to have a little word.
Sorry, just repeat.
I think Rachel.
I would like to say something. I don't know if you...
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, great. So First, I want to say thanks for Dave and Roger and Silvana, Nara, and Mayra for the invitation and for this discussion. And I would like to say that it's like really inspiring to be in a part of group with Latin Americas and other countries together to try to change the things just before the socialism, to do like a better socialism. And I really want to, I don't know if Roger sent already like an email or a link for the conference, because if yes, I have to remember if it's on my email or not, because I want to share it with some friends in Argentina as well, and in Brazil for sure. But I have those contacts, maybe I can bring these people. And just some like 3 points that I would like to remember about the discussions is when we were talking, when Nara told we need to talk about the impact of COVID in Brazil and everywhere. And I was listening the link that Dave sent me in BBC. They were discussing COVID, forest, and everything. And was a journalist called Ricardo. I can hear well his surname, but Ricardo was the first name. And he says, someone asked him about COVID in Brazil, and he said, like, it's very interesting what's happening there, because everything is open. People, it's like if you go there, it's a bit crazy because people usually are doing parties and meetings and going to like, and even they lost beloved people, relatives, maybe because the poverty, the very small, short help from money, this money from the government, which is not the money from government, but it's money from people, and the pressure, the international pressure makes the president give this help to the people. But because the poverty in Brazil now is much higher than in the past, the people maybe is more afraid about hunger, to be hungry and in very limited situation, than about COVID, because they have this expectation, maybe I'm not gonna die for COVID, but I have to have like money to buy any food, like, or the lunch or the dinner or something, not possible to. And some people doesn't know if they wanna have like money for any food. So this could be a broad discussion in the future, but I thought like very interesting what he said. It's like it's very short money, but still is some money than nothing. And the other thing that I want to share about women in Brazil is I have a example from my life. My mom, she was a teacher in the school, and she was giving classes from morning, afternoon, and evening, like 50 hours a week, and like crazy. And she has like 2 daughters, me and my sister. And for a big period, with the Newton Cardoso, when he was government of Minas Gerais state, he just stopped to pay the salary to the teachers and say, no, I'm not gonna pay the salary because we are in crisis. And all of the teachers, which mostly was female, like women, they are just ladies waiting for a husband. So I don't need to pay them. And it's this, and I remember my mom was really struggling to feed my sister, myself, my granddad, and my dad, who was not working. So it was really hard times. And even I was small, I remember this man telling this in the TV. And this is like what is woman in Brazil struggling, as Silvana told. And the other last thing is like the law of abortion in Brazil when was Lula and Dilma Rousseff government, the left-wing government was kind of improved in the, it's not a law to allow abortion, which is bad, because we should have like a law saving women's life, but actually it was a law criminalizing women about abortion. And during Lula and Dilma, they discriminalize abortion in case of risk for mother's life from rape or disease such like hydrocephaly in the babies. So they were not, the woman will be not criminalized, not in the prison, if it was these three cases, which is nothing actually, and was a lot of pressure to do a permission for abortion to like women decide about their lives. And actually with Bolsonaro, he kicked even this discriminalization for the three things, which is horrible. You have to go to the prison if you have abortion if you haven't risked your life, if you have been raped. Was a girl with 11 years old, which almost went to the prison because she was in risk of life and death, and also she was raped for the uncle. And this is a horrible, horrible scenario with Bolsonaro. And he told this week that, if this is not gonna happen never in Brazil when he's in the power, the same what happened last week in Argentina with the discriminalization of abortion. And and really thanks for Mayra about Latin America and all of the sharings, because it's the same situation in Brazil. We are, it's like all of Latin America countries. If we read like the open veins of Latin America from Galeano, we can see the entire link between us. Even we speak Portuguese and the other countries Spanish, we have like very story of exploitation and crimes like this. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Raquel. I really do appreciate all the points, and well, if I could just say, what you've said about your mother and your family shows that we're all just on the precipice, in the sense that, you know, all of those people who've struggled so hard to build a new life, or to build a life for their family, it could all be in ruins in a matter of months because of the capricious action of capitalist governments. It's unbelievable that we can have to live like that. Can I say something, and maybe, I don't know if anyone else got one last contribution? Could I just draw things together? Remember that we are preparing for the conference. There's some marvelous contributions. You won't be able to just say what you've said now because of the time, because there'll be international delegates from all around. So try and think of what's really going to make a difference when you speak in terms of raising the consciousness, raising ideas, and so forth. So be as economical as you can. I used to train myself by, you know, talking in front of a mirror, you know, and then trying to get 5 points out. Actually, usually it ended up 3 across in a mass meeting, or even in a debate or something of that kind. So try and think in that way. I know it's horrible because you've had to sacrifice some good points, but try to think of what is the primary issues that we can get across. And I know that will be so welcomed in the discussion. Can I say something else, which is that, you know, the discussion tonight is such a tribute to the education of women, which I think is probably the most progressive thing which has been forced on capitalism, to actually force the child, the girl child, to be trained and developed and to be able to reach some of the potential, you know, that is possible. It's something which is very dear to me with 4 daughters, but also when I see, you know, poor children being denied, you know, the right to be able to develop and to be able to take society forward. It's not just that it's a shame that they are not trained, that it's all that enormous energy and productivity, productive ideas and contribution to society. And that's what we're witnessing tonight. And, you know, I'm so pleased to see it. So please, I might have some laws that I'd like us to work this way or that way. Please, it's your group, so please contribute. If you have a better idea, please put it there. And if I would like to see some initiative in the next few days before we have the conference to draw in more people, pull in more people, the door's wide open. I will have this recording. I know someone maybe feels that maybe it wouldn't be the very best, but maybe let's do it that way. People can then catch up with this discussion because it's been a very rich discussion. And then we can prepare adequately for the conference itself. Are we agreed on that? Yeah? I think so. Okay, well, look, we can't quite yet sing the International together, but we have that spirit in us.
Can I make a
MST
point?
spirit. Roger?
I just wanted to say, because listening to what Raquel said just now, a very true and a very important point that she said that people are not have not got they don't feel they have the space to worry about COVID because they're worrying where their next meal is coming from. Now, take a step back from that. How much less are people who are engaged in a daily struggle just to keep alive and feed their families and all the rest of it? How much less can they be worried about the Amazon and the rainforest and so on? And that's the problem. And yet, actually, the revolution in Brazil is a matter of life and death to all of us on the planet. And that's something we have to keep in mind. The world has never been so united as it is now. The working class and the interests of the working class has never been bound together so closely and so tightly as now. And that's why, you know, the revolution in Brazil is a top priority for all of us.
Yeah. Thanks, Roger. Well, look, the only reason I'm wanting to close now is because I think Nara will drop from exhaustion, and maybe we've had the very best of the discussion. So thank you, one and all, and let's look forward to further exchanges on the group and to marvelous participation in the conference, which is coming on the 10th. So we look forward to all of you being there, and another 5 to 1. In other words, for every one person here, we would like to see 5 additional ones, if you could do that. Okay.
Thank you, David. But would you be able to send the timetable for the conference, etc.? So
yeah, I can tell you very, very briefly that because we've got 4 sessions of 3 hours each, and the first 2 will be around the political perspectives documents, which is 2020 vision, world perspectives, and a supplement to that, which David is producing, which will be out any moment, I believe, right? And that will be circulated. The second 2 sessions will be on organizational questions, including the manifesto, which you received copies, yes? So yes, you have. It's in newsletter that I sent out a few days ago, and that's a draft constitution, if you like, or manifesto, whatever you want to call it, for WIN, and other things like structure, organizational questions. So that's the basic timetable.
okay, thank you.
Do come to all the sessions, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, Roger, where do I find the link for the Brink?
Sorry?
Where do I find the manifesto in the Brink? Am I including some form of email that I haven't realized?
Look, I'll send it you again. I think I sent it already, but I'll send it you, Myra. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna forward there in the group again. I have it.
Right.
In hands.
Okay.
Yeah. It's there now. I put it there.
Thank you, Nara. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
comrades.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mara. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Have a lovely
everybody.
weekend and successful 21st, 21.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
And
Yes.
to you all, you
This
guys.
is the year that we get revenge.
Now,
I
remember-
think we can't wait
Also-
for a revolution in Brazil because people are fired up.
I know it's
Well,
coming.
let's
Don't
see.
worry,
Let's
it's
see.
coming.
We'll
And we
find
just
out.
have to be up to it when it comes.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Mhm.
Bye, bye.